To introduce our first moderator, I'm going to first ask Dr. Gary Mangiafico to join me on stage for a moment. Aside from being an associate dean at the Graziadio School, he's also a disruptor and a leader of organizational change. So he's very fitting for tonight. Thank you all very much.
Well, good evening and welcome. We're delighted to have everyone here. I think this is going to be a very exceptional experience this evening. I was thinking about disruptive technologies when I first heard from Jeff and Prema about doing this tonight. I remember my first disruptive technology was 1983. I was the National Director of Clinical Operations for healthcare. They put this box on my desk and it had a keyboard. I hadn't seen a keyboard since graduate school. And it turned out to be a computer. It just looked like a big word processor. But I really thought it was an attempt to get rid of my executive assistant, so I refused to learn it for the first year. But eventually it was disruptive enough. Now I'm used to it. I want to thank Jeff and Prema for their leadership for this evening and for GAN alumni network here in Orange County. So please again give them a lot of work. Time and energy. So many of you I've met. Many of you are former students. But as Jeff said, I'm Dr. Gary Mangiafico. I'm the Associate Dean for the Graziadio Graduate School and have responsibility for all our regional campuses and the fully employed programs and executive programs throughout our school. I wanted to give you a couple of updates about some exciting things that are happening with the school before we launch the program. First of all, I wanted to let you know that we have officially launched this year a new executive education division at the Graziadio School for executive education that extends beyond the degree. And tonight we have with us Rachel Williams, who is our new director of that division. So Rachel, welcome. And she's going to be developing a number of initiatives. We already have a number underway. But in particular, what we're calling our Corporate Education Solutions Group. And this will be the first executive education, university-sponsored executive education that actually will be in the business of customizing education solutions for companies. And so we're very excited about it. Had an extensive amount of interest and keeping Rachel very, very busy. And she's only been with us for about 2 months. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that many of you are familiar with our entrepreneurial emphasis within the MBA program. And this year we have actually further developed that, actually with a great deal of support from the first moderator here tonight, into an actual Master's of Science degree. So our Master's of Science in Entrepreneurship will launch this summer. The first cohort will be launched in our West LA campus. And then the Masters of Science and Entrepreneurship will launch at our Irvine campus in the fall. This is particularly an interesting design program. It's designed around problem formulation, then solution formulation, and then solution implementation. So it actually supports the students all the way through not only the education, but hopefully the implementation of a lot of their projects. But then to support this curriculum, we have also developed a number of other initiatives. We have an Entrepreneur in Residence program, and our current fellow is John Shearer, who is here tonight. John's right. So here's John. John's our current Entrepreneur in Residence, and who's going to be available to nurture concepts from idea through fruition. And then we have a Seniors Fellows Entrepreneurship group that has started. We have a number of founding fellows that have already committed substantial dollars and time and investment into this program. And then we have a new partnership that we are invested in with others called the First Wave Accelerator, which is generating a fund to hopefully invest in some of these ideas that students bring forward. And so I want to introduce Mike Sims, who's our executive officer, who's responsible for bringing those forward to the school. So this really is going to create a center of excellence at Graziadio for entrepreneurship going forward. So I would encourage you to check it out more, because I know many of you here tonight are entrepreneurs at heart. The other thing I wanted to let you know, if you hadn't heard, how many of you took E2B when you were in school? The Education to Business program? we have? Okay, a number of you. This is a program that we launched a few years ago. Dorian Shanahan is the director of it. This is a program that's specially designed to take students out of the classroom into business, solving real-world problems in real time. And that program has just been named by U.S. News and World Report as one of the #1 college courses, not just a business course, but of all college courses offered in the United States, it's been named one of the top 10 in the country. So we're very excited about that, and would encourage you to look into that as well. Also, we have launched an extensive amount of research by Dr. John Paglia. Many of you may have known him, and he's doing the Private Capital Markets Project, and this is the first comprehensive look and investigation of major private capital market segment, and in particular the cost of that capital. This is on, I think, his fourth level of research in this area. It's taken off. You can go to the website and look at the report and download it. It's the first time that there's been this sort of comprehensive study of the cost of capital to the small and mid-sized cap businesses who are privately held, since most of the valuation is done on publicly held businesses and so forth. It's had tremendous response from the public and community and so forth, and so we're actually going to be developing a certificate of training and assessing the private capital market. That's going to be led by Dr. Paglia as well. And then for all of you as alumni, I want to remind you that amongst these and a lot of other things that are going on at the school that are very exciting right now, that you're eligible for the MBA Plus program. And if you don't recall what that is, you're welcome to come back once a year and take a course for only 25% of the normal tuition. So if you got out and said, oh, I wish I'd taken that course, or what are these new entrepreneurial areas that sound interesting to you, it's a 75% discounted tuition to be able to take one of those courses. So if you're interested in that MBA Plus, I encourage you to look into it. Also want to remind you of the Alumni Scholarship Program, if you haven't heard of that. The Alumni Scholarship Program is that if a student comes to us referred by an alum, they get a $2,500 scholarship added and credited to their account in your honor as a result of having been referred by an alum. So if you know friends or colleagues that you think would be qualified and make a good Pepperdine graduate student, we'd love to hear from them. And there's these little cards, this is what I got just a minute ago. They're out at the front there. But it's the registration card for making that referral into the school. And again, it's a good way if you've got friends or colleagues that we're looking at graduate school, we're looking at Pepperdine, and you had a great experience and want to pass that forward, that not only will they get referred into the program, but actually get a little bit of financial assistance to get that started. We think we continue to offer some of the most outstanding graduate programs that are really vested in personal transformation, as well as the building of executive judgment and strategy. So obviously, we like to think that's what all of you have carried away from the school, and others coming in as a result of your referrals will also get. So again, I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank our panelists, all the companies that are going to be represented tonight, and they're here, and introduce you to the first moderator and get this thing started. And that's Dr. John Mooney. Some of you may have also had John as a professor when you were in school. He is known for many reasons, not the least of which is from Ireland. So you got to always kind of figure out that accent a little bit if you start talking to him. But he has a PhD here from UC Irvine in Information Systems and Business Strategy. He's been a professor of Information Systems and Strategy at Pepperdine since 2003. He's the former Associate Dean himself of the Fully Employed Programs and Academic Programs at Graziadio. He left this year to go on sabbatical, where he is a visiting scholar in residence at MIT. So he's gone a lot, but he agreed to come back this week in order to participate and be part of this evening. So with that, Dr. John Mooney.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. It takes, as you know, many of you know, it takes about 6 hours to fly from Boston. It takes 2.5 hours today to drive from West LA. So we need some disruptive technologies. When it comes to you have to get your feet on the ground, we need some new disruptive technologies. Russell, maybe you can add that to your list. This is a topic I've had great interest in for many years. Gary explained his first major disruptive technology. I guess for me too, it's kind of the PC was probably my earliest sort of disruptive technology. But my first technology as an academic that I really got interested in and was had great fun participating in some of the early innovations was in the late 90s when the internet was really catching. So this actually is my .com suit. I reached into the back of the closet and took out my black .com suit. For anyone if you hear from Ireland, somewhere in here, Louis Copeland made it. It's also probably one of the most expensive suits, but it lasted well. Anyway, so I want to move on to the panel, which is about disruptive technologies. And what we mean by disruptive technologies is, in case that is a term you're not familiar with, new technologies which fundamentally disrupt the dynamics of an industry. And that may then lead, that may take effect through its impact on products or through how the product is distributed perhaps, or it fundamentally disrupts the underlying economics that have dominated that industry. And as a consequence, typically erodes some of the long-standing strengths. Some of the market players struggle more to sustain their presence in the industry, and typically leads to great change and disruption within an industry or within a market. We would contrast them typically to sustaining innovations, which is going to be ongoing innovation that's necessary for any business to continue to prosper in its industry. What we've done here, and what the group have done, well not what we've done, I came in at the end, what the group has done is put together a panel that represents different industries, and from our panelists here, we have people who are going to tell us in their opening comments about a disruptive technology that's emerging within their firm, and they're going to share with us their perspectives on the anticipated impacts of that technology within their industry, and of course the benefits that it should have for their firms. So, because we're running a little bit late, I'm going to move straight to the panel, and rather than me introducing them, guys, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself as you lead off with your comments. And then each panelist will spend about 5 minutes sharing a little story about their disruptive technology and its anticipated benefits and impacts. And then I will follow up with about 10 minutes of Q&A to follow up on their comments. Jeff has invited you to pass your comments and your questions to him. He wants to be sitting there. He's over there now. And they'll be monitoring the comments and questions coming in, and towards the end we'll have an open forum where we'll get to hear your questions and comments. So, we're going to move from left to right here. Mark, I'll hand over to you. I invite you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, what you do there, and your disruptive technology.
Very good. Okay, good evening everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mark Czaja, and I'm the Vice President of Technology and Innovation at Vare Aerospace, which is located in Irvine, just down the road. Still took me about an hour to get here. Vare Aerospace. It may not be a company that you've heard of, but we're about a $2 billion company, and we focus in on motion and control systems. On an aircraft, we do the hydraulic systems, we do the flight controls, and we do the fuel systems. We do the things within the airplane that help me fly. I've been there for about 25 years, and the company, the Aerospace Group, we're about a $2 billion company. We're part of the larger Vare Corporation, which is about an $11 billion company. So, let's see, the disruptive technology that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about something called onboard inert gas generation systems. Before you go, well, what the heck is that? Why would we even talk about that? You know, being a part of a large company like Vare Aerospace, we have a number of different technologies that we have underway in development. But I thought that this one would be interesting to you because you could probably resonate with this, because onboard inert gas generation systems are used today, are being introduced onto aircraft for safety. And it's probably, I may be getting my facts wrong, but 10, 12 years ago, TWA Flight 800 over New York exploded midair. The entire aircraft was lost, all passengers on board were lost. When they did the root cause corrective action on TWA Flight 800, what they attributed that crash to was an electrical spark within the fuel tank. That's a bad thing. And there have been a number of other incidents, not as dramatic as TWA Flight 800, but on the ground, Singapore Airlines aircraft, that was lost and products were lost as well. And so, having this combination of a lot of jet fuel, all of this electrical wiring running through the fuel tanks, it's a combination where you've got a source of ignition, you've got the oxygen to support combustion, and you've got all of the fuel in the tank. And so you've got the three things to create a catastrophic situation. And so what we did was we looked at technology that we were using in military aircraft, and then we also looked across Carpenter as a corporation to some of the technologies that we have in the industrial sector. And what we came up with is what we call onboard inert gas generation systems. And what that is we're using a hollow fiber membrane to take the air that's in the fuel tank. We call that the ullage, the area that's the air that exists above the fuel. And we circulate that air through a filtration system. And these fiber membranes, they preferentially separate the nitrogen content from the oxygen content in the air. And by recirculating that through the tank, we're able to reduce the oxygen content lower and lower and lower, to the point where you've still got fuel. Obviously, you need the fuel, and you still got wires, because you still need to have the wires for an aircraft. But what we've done is we've eliminated the atmosphere that can support combustion. So we've created an inert environment. And so the value proposition is really the safety of the aircraft. And that's something that, because I fly a lot, I'm concerned about. And I think that it's something that most folks would say that's a good thing. One of the, say, unanticipated things when we started the development of this technology, probably about 10 years ago, was it's also been an enabler for the introduction of composites onto aircraft as well. Some of the new aircraft, like the Boeing 787 and the A350, are composites. And the composite structure does not have the same thermal dissipation that an aluminum aircraft does. By the introduction of our inerting system, you can have composite wings with fuel in those wings, and because those are now running at higher temperatures, you just simply couldn't do that with composites unless you had the inerting system. And so it's been something that we introduced because of safety, but it's also enabled other advancements of technology in the industry. And from us, it's been a disruptive technology. The introduction of these hollow fiber membranes is something that had not ever been done before. And it's something that, because we were able to draw on the industrial technology, it's allowed us to capture about 85% market share in this space. And we're currently putting these systems on all of the new commercial aircraft, and we're retrofitting the fleet as well. It's also been a disruptive business case as well, because we've had to restructure our business, and this technology has enabled us to take what was our fuel systems business and combine the inerting into the fuel systems that we offer. And so it's been able to allow us to expand the business, not to just sell the inerting, but it's also allowed us to bring on board the fuel systems that we would otherwise compete against other companies. And now we have a much better position. That's my technology.
Good evening. My name is Santosh. I'm a director in the strategic product planning division at the St. Jude Medical. It's not affiliation with the St. Jude hospitals. St. Jude Medical is a medical device company that's based in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a $5 billion company, and our cardiac movement business is based here in Los Angeles. And we make implanted cardiac devices. They are pacemakers, ICDs, CRT devices, things like that. The technology that I wanted to talk about was the thing that my team works on, which is the use of wireless remote monitoring technologies for patients with implanted devices. So if you can think of patients with implanted devices or implanted sensors, these wireless technologies enable the patient's information from those sensors to be read from their home and transmitted wirelessly to centralized servers where they can be processed. And then it can trigger alerts or messages to physicians, or physicians may log into a website and look at how the patient's doing. And that's really going to transform the way patients with, for instance, heart failure are taken care of. because this allows someone to be more, it's almost as if somebody's monitoring the patient all the time versus before you might see the patient in your clinic once a month or once every couple of months. You might get some data points. Now you have technology that allows you to collect all this information on a real-time basis and react to how the patient might be doing, change their medication, bring them in for other tests. It really increases the capacity of the healthcare system to deal with lots of patients with chronic illnesses. So this is going to really transform the way healthcare is delivered for these patients in many ways. First of all, it will enable patients to have much better quality of life. Secondly, it will enable much better care for patients who may not live in central urban locations where they have access to a major tertiary health facility like UCLA or something like that. And also it enables the healthcare providers to manage their patient load much better, because now you're able to triage and figure out which patients need the most attention and which ones are doing all right and need less attention and so forth. So if you think about the aging population, the number of people with chronic diseases going up, and the number of healthcare providers is not going up at the same rate. So you need the same one physician or one nurse to take care of more patients. So this is going to be, or this is already happening, and it's going to be a major win for the healthcare system.
Good evening. I'm Tom Sumner, and I work for Yamaha. And Yamaha, as you may know, is the world's largest musical instrument manufacturer. We're in basically every kind of music and sound that you would want to be in, everything from manufacturing a grand piano to reproducing that sound in a concert hall to reproducing it in your home with home audio equipment. And what I wanted to talk about tonight for our disruptive technology has to do with our professional audio business. And in our pro audio business, today we're the largest manufacturer for digital mixers. So if you go to see a concert, if you went to saw a concert over the summer, if you saw, Tom Petty or any of those kind of acts, you probably had it mixed through a Yamaha digital mixer. Go back a few years, and the problem with this business is that the people who are actually mixing have the best ears in the entire world. I mean, they are the pickiest listeners in the world, and they should be. They know it very, very well. So we had a big challenge because we were trying to get into the digital mixer business, and digital was basically, the engineers said, digital sucks. They didn't like the sound of it. They liked the sound of the old analog gear. And we had tried quite a few things to try to prove to them that it sounded as good as analog or was better than analog. And almost nothing worked. And their ears are very good, so you got to trust their ears. My ears are pretty good too, but their ears are really good. So in Japan, we have an engineer whose name is Santosh Kumamura, and he came up with this idea. He went back to the old boards and he tried to get the old mixing boards, and he said, how do we get it to sound just like this? And he went and he modeled the boards, and he came up with a physical model of the boards to make it sound exactly the same. And even modeling, the output characteristics of the board, really couldn't get it to work. So went back a couple of years later, went back to Japan, and he had gotten it basically perfect. And what he had done is he had actually said, okay, so I took this old mixer, so whatever the old analog mixer was, and he actually took each individual component and physically modeled each individual component, digitally modeled each individual component. So if there was a resistor in there, or a transistor, or a capacitor, he modeled each one of those. And believe it or not, so what happens is then it responds just like that original mixer. So that was what was the tipping point, was to get the live sound engineers and the studio engineers behind digital finally. They finally dumped the analog stuff and went digital. And that's really been huge for us. And we use virtual, it's called virtual component modeling. So we actually use that in mixers all the way down to several $100s at this point. But that was a disruptive technology that really changed the concert sound industry, because you can actually dial in your sound at almost any venue around the country very easily with digital boards.
Good evening, my name is Russell Vare. I'm the EV Regional Manager for Nissan, and I'm working on the Nissan Leaf electric vehicle launch for the West Coast, and my role is on market readiness. So we work a lot with utility companies, local governments, state governments on preparing electric vehicles, everything from infrastructure development to streamlining the permitting process. And although for California, is anyone here seen Who Killed the Electric Car documentary? Yeah. So even though California has some experience in electric vehicles, there's still another 49 states that haven't. So we're doing kind of that, building that base work to support electric vehicle launching. And to touch on why it's disruptive, I think it's important to look at what we're trying to disrupt. And one, it's air quality. So I have zero emissions improves air quality and smog. Two is greenhouse gas emissions. You have a more efficient drivetrain, and then also the opportunity to use a renewable fuel, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then also, since you're not using gas or oil in the vehicle, it's like energy independence or energy security rather. So that's what we're trying to disrupt, is when you have a fully electric vehicle, you really change how you're using your transportation fuel. And just to give you the kind of 30-second commercial, a lot of the questions we get are how fast, how much. It's a 5-seater car, goes 100 miles with each charge, and it has a top speed of 90 miles an hour. So it's really a fully functional kind of vehicle that can meet the needs of most commuters out there. Well, in terms of disrupting, the fuel sources, that when you're not using any gas or any oil for the transmission or for the engine motor, you're refueling at home in your garage. So it's this new kind of shift in how we use our car and how we fuel our car. You plug in each night, rather than wait till you're empty and fuel somewhere. You plug in each night like your cell phone. So it's a new way of thinking about how you drive and how you use your car. So with the introduction, we just launched in 7 states in the U.S. and we have first 2 years there's 50,000 vehicles being produced in Japan. We have a factory under construction in Smyrna, Tennessee right now to do another 150,000 units a year for North America. So with there's an electric car, there's an electric car converting back there at the Porsche, and then Tesla's here as well. So I don't think that electric cars have been here for decades. I mean, some of the first electric cars in the 1900s, some of the first vehicles in the 1900s were electric. So I think what's disruptive too is scale. Is when you start thinking about these vehicles aren't coming in the hundreds, they're going to be coming in the tens of thousands within the next couple of years, and that's when you have that scale is when you really start to see kind of change in the industry.
Great, thank you all very much. So I'm going to ask a few follow-up questions, and I encourage all of you to start thinking about the questions that you want to ask as well, because this is here to provide value to all of you. I'm interested for each of you, I guess a big aspiration of a lot of established firms, or indeed a big aspiration of a new venture, would be to develop this new technology that truly is disruptive for your industry. And of course, the magic sauce that we'd all like to know is what needs to happen inside a firm, what processes, resources, capabilities, what contributes to the ability of each of your organizations to actually develop, and then secondly, commercialize, which of course are 2 critical steps, these disruptive technologies that you talked about. And again, we'll start on this side.
Okay, that's a really good question. Again, as a larger company, we try to drive a smooth process. And so, even innovation, we try to drive this process. And so, when people talk about the fuzzy front end, I'd say that idea generation is fuzzy. But what we've implemented is a way for people across the company to submit ideas. And then we have a process that allows us to screen those ideas and then fund them in a stage gate process. And so, a concept idea might get funding for 2 weeks to just go into a research study. And then we continually evaluate these through this, what we call innovation process, where we look at the technical maturity, we look at the business case, we look at the commercialization plan of how successful we think it'll be. And it's kind of like buying options on a project. And then we advance them through our system accordingly.
I think it's really important to have a process, as you described. And fortunately for me, we are in a very highly regulated industry, so we have to have a process for everything. What we have is a comprehensive commercialization process. So any project, whether it is very early stage R&D to very late stage product development, has a commercialization aspect to it. And so at every stage, as it goes to a stage gate process, you're evaluating the fit of the technology to fit into the problem having commercial merit, what it will take to commercialize it, and so forth. So, and reducing the risks out of the problem as you go along from the early R&D to late product development. So a very structured process, and with milestones and in place where it's evaluated whether it should go to the next stage or not. And then that's how I think that's how most big companies do it. Certainly how we do it.
I think it's a little different at Yamaha because I think one of the strengths of our company is that we really are a group of creative people. So in general, you get musicians and kind of sort of wacky engineer guys that get attracted to the company. So we sort of get the wackiest engineers in Japan and from all over the world to come to Yamaha. And so there's a lot of individual development. That thing I told you about Dr. K, he really developed that virtual component modeling on his own. And we have other people in the company that develop things on their own. And there are a lot of things that, you know, flat out don't work and the technology works, but they don't work commercially. But then there are a lot of other things that we develop that do work. So really it's basically Yamaha, I think it's really about creativity and having that group of people that are very creative and that are able to come up with individual ideas that they can really translate into products that work in the market space.
I think what's unique for Nissan is the leadership of our CEO, Carlos Goa. I mean, we've had our lithium-ion battery technology research began back in 1993. So there's been a long history of lithium-ion battery technology. We've had demonstrations of battery vehicles back in the 90s. You know, the fact that we kind of came to market first with such a large commitment in building factories worldwide really came from the leadership. You know, we could have, if it was someone else, maybe it would have been waiting for a few other competitors to enter the market or waiting until the battery technology got 120 miles range as opposed to 100 mile range. So I think it was, in our case, kind of that leadership that drove us.
Great, thank you. I'll ask one more question and then I'll throw it open to see what we have. Your whole rationale in developing and commercializing these disruptive technologies is, of course, to create benefit for your own companies. But if these technologies are truly disruptive, then they're likely to have other impacts along the supply chain, either the lead up to your firms or in distribution. And kind of just following the theme from Gary's opening comments about our background in entrepreneurship. There are likely, or possibly, other entrepreneurial opportunities for other new ventures here to take advantage of the changing world that your technologies are going to facilitate. Can you give us any kind of clues or a heads up here in terms of where you see those big opportunities around you?
I guess again, let's start first. Down there we're talking about electric cars. We're working on electric airplanes. Of course, you have to fuel them, and we have to work out some of the details. But NASA is actually working on electric engines to power the aircraft. We're working on systems today that were, say, hydraulically powered, and moving those into more electric systems. And the generating capability on each new aircraft is just growing considerably compared to the aircraft that preceded it. And so I see a lot of opportunity in our aerospace industry to learn from some of the good work happening in the automotive industry about how to take, say, systems that were traditionally powered hydraulically or mechanically and turn them into electric systems.
Great, thank you.
I think one thing that's about healthcare is that it's really a system with lots of different players who have different incentives. So nothing can be successful unless there's something in it for all the key players. So for us as a medical device company or something bringing wireless monitoring technologies to the market, what we see is what this enables is for the payers, for instance, there have been studies, one published in the Lancet this last month, that showed that heart failure patients who are monitored more closely using wireless technologies had fewer hospitalizations. So overall, if you are someone who's putting the bills, it's good for you. For the people who providers, these who provide healthcare, this enables them to distribute their time better and take care of their patients and hence probably make money. So what we see is when the technology is right, there's benefits for all players in it. If the economic incentives are right for everybody, and that's really what makes some things take off in a big way versus other things stall, even though they are beneficial to some of the people involved.
I think from the music side of things, one of the things we're really trying to do is to take that electronic music and make it more human, and to take some of the things that are difficult to deal with, like grand pianos. They're a little heavy. Is anybody actually moving a grand piano? Not. So they're a little heavy to move around. So we like taking traditional instruments and trying to make them electronic, but also trying to make them more human. So we've done sort of wacky things which actually work very well for a musician, where we try to make it more human. So as an example, we have an electronic piano that we make that responds just like a piano. So when you press down the pedals on the piano, you can actually feel it, feel it moving the inside of the piano, even though it's not really doing that. And of course, you also can hear the sound coming from the individual strings, even though it doesn't have individual strings. And you can actually feel the soundboard vibrate under your hands, even though there is no soundboard. So it's all kind of tactile recognition. Also done things like, I don't know if anybody's seen the vintage guitar market, but vintage guitars sell for crazy amounts of dollars, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's kind of the aged wood syndrome. So we actually have machines at our factories that age the wood. And it's amazing technology, but it makes it vintage. You can take a brand new guitar that's been in existence for a month, and it feels like it's been there since the 1950s. So it's really sort of making that music human.
For Nissan, and I know a lot of the other automotive makers out there, the two new areas are the battery and the telematics system. We're looking at secondary uses for that battery. We're working with utility companies to try and figure out ways to sell those batteries for renewable energy, intermittent storage, so you can store solar or wind, and then reuse that energy at different times, either utility scale or even smaller scale, like community or household scale. So that's a whole new industry that's developing in energy storage. And then secondly is the telematics system. The car has a cellular chip, so you can communicate with the car from your phone or from a laptop, and everything from locating charging stations to turning the climate control on and off to setting your charge. So there's a lot of new features of interactivity with a vehicle that are almost like more like a consumer electronic as opposed to just an automobile. So it's a whole new industry in that area that's developed.
Great, thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, there's been some good questions. The first one's aimed at Russell, and it's the question about whether the electric companies are ready for the increased demand on the utility system. I think in a broader sense, how do you get the market supporting partnerships and so on ready for the technology?
Yeah, we're working closely with a lot of the utilities, and one of the nice things about electric vehicles is most people will plug them in at home at night. So you're using off-peak electricity, which for utilities is the time that they're least used. There's a lot of unused power at night. So there's not necessarily much capacity that needs to be developed. What we're working on is making sure that their individual circuits can handle new electric vehicles. So we're working closely with utilities about how to plan for individual circuits, and then making sure that there's integration of renewables. One of the exciting things is Seattle City and Light. It's a municipal utility in Washington State. They have a lot of hydro, and then they also have carbon offsets. So they have 100% carbon-free electricity for that utility. So it's already starting to move towards getting that carbon-free transportation.
Great.
Another more general question from Tim, and it's about cycling through failed attempts at disruptive technologies. What's the cycle? How do you cycle through failures before you finally implement fix them?
I wanted to follow up too, because none of you mentioned one of the sort of an essential ingredient for innovation and luck and serendipity being two of those, right? But there is experimentation is the other.
Yeah, you got to be able to fail, and we've had plenty of things that either we consider either a success or a failure, depending on how you look at it. And sometimes we've had a product that was a huge success to begin with, and then other companies came in and undercut us. So a perfect example of that is we had a product that, or we have a product that provides surround sound, and it provides surround sound from one piece. And we've had this for about 7 or 8 years. And initially it was very well received, did really well in the market space, and then other people came in and made it smaller and cheaper, and not quite as good probably, but came in and took quite a bit of the market. So, but you have to be able to fail, and we've had, I've seen lots of products visiting Japan that you just look at and you say, why? Why would you do that? And we come out with it, and sometimes it just doesn't work, so you have to be able to fail.
Is that the sound part?
Yeah.
I've got mine and I love it.
It's great. It's great. It's a great product. Still works really well.
Yeah, I think in terms of market conditions, obviously higher oil prices are going to create a much friendlier environment for electric vehicles. I know I've been hearing everyone's traffic problems tonight. There's that leaf qualifies for the carpool lane, so maybe that would
make any difference. I will stop as well. So. I'm going to come to the non-tweeters in the audience, so if you have a question that you want to ask, I'll come to you in a second. Just on this issue here, I'm kind of preparing for the panel during the week, I came across a perspective I thought was very interesting about what can foster or fuel something that's highly innovative to the level that may be disruptive, and that is any new innovation that addresses a fundamental scarcity. So, increasingly oil is a scarcity. Water, of course, is something that's emerging, becoming scarce as well. But those the technologies which address the fundamental scarcity, because from economics, things that are scarce tend to be more expensive as well. And the little twist on that, which I thought was interesting, is technologies or innovations that take things that are in abundance, which are fundamentally cheap, and apply them towards issues that are, or problems that have underlying scarcity, can be a really interesting combination as well. And I think from my perspective, healthcare for sure, there's a number of areas where there's some fundamental scarcity that technology that Santosh described for us. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
When you guys get to start on a new project, what's a typical seed funding budget for something you should
I guess in my group, we'll typically start out small. It'll start with an idea, and we'll say, okay, you've got funding for 2 people for 2 weeks to go do a study. And so most projects that maybe end up still being very big projects start out with very small seed funding, and then kind of earn their incremental funding as the project progresses. They're not guaranteed $10 million from the get-go, but we might spend $10 million developing a fund.
I think the really innovative things, nobody knows about it. Somebody just decides they're going to do it, and 2 engineers spend extra time for a couple of months, and they prototype something, and then people who actually approve funding might actually see it, and that's how it usually happens. Because I've seen great ideas with great PowerPoint decks behind them, go from presentation to presentation for months and months and years, and then somebody just does something and shows something that's real, and that's attention.
Yeah, well, similar, we usually have people that sort of develop a concept or some sort of technology, and then it's usually a small group that we put together that will really try to bring it to fruition, but it's usually just a few people, 3 or 4 people, sort of a cross-functional team. It's not a lot that we put into it, it's really just people time mostly.
I'd say for us, like I said, electric vehicle technology is not necessarily new, but the several $1 billion in battery plant funding and that capital investment is really what's making a change.
I see a hand come up on this side. I want to make sure that I get Not yet? Okay. Over there against the wall, and then the back row will be after you.
Okay, so my question is the moral of the story here, based on what you guys have been saying, is if you want to be successful, it doesn't matter if your employer is going to pay for it, just go off and do something and just try to make something happen? Or is it, I mean, it seems like it's all happening outside of the institutional control of the company as far as innovation goes. And I don't know if you guys can comment.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, you know, we have kind of what I would call iterative products. So in other words, they're products that have been developed. I mean, perfect example for Yamaha is a grand piano. I mean, we've been making grand pianos for, 100 years at this point. And the grand piano basically has been in its same form for about 300 years. So very few products you can say that about, right? It's been selling in its existing form for about 300 years. So those products, we continually improve, but we don't have people trying to invent necessarily new grand pianos. But for something that's really innovative and something that's new and something that is going to be disruptive, it probably is sort of a skunk works kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, like I said, our vehicle launched in December, so it's not necessarily going to be the car, but some of those other things like the secondary batteries. I mean, there's a lot of room for new ideas and innovation within the institution for that, because it hasn't been figured out yet.
But how does your company encourage that institution?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer.
I want to make a comment on that. When you're a full-time employee of a company, you have to remember that you've signed either an NDA or a CDA. So if you go for it and if you've invented something, while you're a full-time employee, your company owns that technology. So you've got to be real careful about separating what you're doing on company time and using your computer that you have at work or that you're using the laptop to bring and separating them.
You've reminded me of Google. My office at MIT is in the same building as Google, and I had read before that Google employees are expected to spend 1 day a week on something other than their job. And so I was riding an elevator a couple of weeks ago with one of the guys, and I said, "Oh, is this true?" And he said, "Yeah, it's true." And I said, "Well, which day of the week do you do?" He said, "Sunday afternoons."
To the gentleman with Yamaha, there's two questions. What are the annual sales of Yamaha, the entire corporation? And secondly, did you do kind of a blind wine test when you showed them the digital versus the other mixer?
Versus the analog stuff?
The analog stuff. Is that how they finally bought in?
A couple of things. So Yamaha, too. So the Motors company is a separate company. It's been a separate company for a long time. It's about a $5 billion a year company. Yamaha is for musical instruments. And we really worked with the engineers. So they were kind of bought in all the way along. So we started off, we might have had a compressor or a channel strip or some piece. So they were sort of bought in all along as we were building the mixer. So we took some of the, we took somebody like Elliot Shiner, who's a big engineer, and we had him listen to it all the way along. So they were kind of bought in as we were building the mixer and as we were building it.
So either prove each kind of incremental improvement.
Yeah, and they certainly had comments all the way along, and it could be, it might not even be about the sound. It might be, well, the fader needs to be, stickier, or the fader needs to be longer.
We are going to...
We're going to take a very short break, and then we'll reconvene.
Take a very short break, and then reconvene. Thank you. Thank you, the panel, for coming and sharing your insights.